Hey everybody, and welcome back to Serenity Art Space. My name is Lou. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We'll keep this video just kind of an art nerd talk video. Obviously I haven't made much progress on Beatrice the Queen here. I've had some things to take care of, business. We're reopening this week at my day job, doing tattoos at Mass Ink. And I also had a wedding to go to. So I've been answering a lot of emails, going back and forth with clients, trying to get them rebooked into the calendar. And so I just really haven't had a lot of time to sit here at the easel and continue on this painting. I did finish up the little green army man painting. I got the sides painted on that and got a clear coat on there. That's just drying. That'll get shipped out either today or tomorrow. So I think today we'll just talk a little bit about how to find time to draw and paint and why you should try to at least work some of that in every day, even if it's only 15 minutes. And then a little bit about inspiration, some artists that inspire me and how I use that to motivate me to get me on the easel again. So sit back, relax, and let's talk some art. Alright, so not all of us have a job that involves drawing every day. I happen to be fortunate enough to have a job where every single day I need to draw something, whether it's for my clients that are coming up that week, stuff in the future, and then obviously I have commission paintings to do, and now I have these videos to do as well. So I've created a lot of reasons for me to draw. Not everyone has that in their life. You've got a regular day job, whether you're working in the trades or you work in an office, a hospital, whatever you happen to do. I used to work those jobs too, and they're exhausting. There's times you come home and you just don't want to get out all your art supplies and draw and things like that. So one of the things you can do is in your home, try to have a dedicated area set up for art. It doesn't have to be a big area. It could just be a small desk in the corner, a little table in the corner or something. A type of space to where it's really just a matter of sitting down and starting. Putting art supplies in bins and then putting them away in a cabinet, in a closet somewhere, or in the garage, and then it becomes a chore. And it's easy to talk yourself out of it and say, well, I'll do it on my day off because I have to get all that stuff down. That's exactly how procrastination happens. I know because I'm a professional procrastinator. I find every reason in the world to not do something, and I'm pretty good at it. So having that little dedicated area where you could just sit down, pull out a sketch pad, or have an easel already set up with a painting on it, and then it's a matter of just sitting down, squirting out a little bit of paint, and go. Put on your favorite music, or put on some TV shows in the background, whatever you do to get you through the whole thing. So I would say that's the first thing, having an easy access to your art supplies. Secondly, and I've done this to myself too. I've kind of audited my time, my days, the hours that I spend doing certain things. And it's easy to let time get away from you, playing a video game or going on social media, anything. It's not 100% a waste of time. Staying connected with friends and stuff is important. Having an escape like a video game is important. But do you really need 3 or 4 hours of it all in a row? Probably not. So even taking just 1 hour of that time, setting that aside, even if it's just to sit down and doodle something, work on an existing project you're working on, whatever it is, there's usually some time you can find in the day that if you write it down, put it on a whiteboard, whatever you need to do, put it in your phone and your calendar as a reminder. I have reminders on all of my devices of that reminds me to work on art. It also reminds me to go to work, because sometimes in the morning I'll get involved in painting or doing something else, time gets away from me. and I have that reminder that I need to stop doing that and start getting ready to go to work. So now it doesn't even need to be an hour. It could be 15 minutes, could be a half hour, whatever it happens to be. Start making a habit out of it, and you'll find, I think sometimes, especially once your work improves and you're having great fun at it, that you're gonna actually start looking forward to that time. There's been times where I have had to force myself to sit down and work on some artwork, and I have a half hour set aside for it or an hour. That time expires, but I keep doing it because it is fun, and I have a little extra time that I can work on it. So, in other ways that you can get more art into your life, at least art practice, keeping a sketchbook and just a simple pencil and eraser in your car or in your desk at work, with you somewhere that's not at home where your normal art space is. And that way, if you find yourself with having to wait for something, or you're on your lunch break and you're eating a sandwich that's easy to eat with one hand, you can draw with the other hand and just doodle. It works parts of your brain that are really going to help to improve your art later on. So finding those little moments here and there to practice that. I also played music, and one of the things that any art instructor will tell you is sometimes you can practice too much. The better way to practice is smaller increments but more consistently. I think this also is analogous to certain types of exercise and workouts, rather than lifting the heavy. It depends, I guess, on what you're trying to do, but for the most part, it's smaller sets, but more consistently of them. So same with music, and it also applies to art. And my other video talking about sketching, that's something you can do anywhere. It just reminded me of a time when I was a tow truck driver, and there was a lot of times where I was in between calls waiting. I would stop to maybe get a snack or a drink and wait for the next call to come in. I kept a sketchbook right in my truck with me. A lot of times I would sit in front of a convenience store where I could see through the glass that's a register, and the customers coming up to the register, I would sit there and just do a little sketch and a cartoon of them, whatever, if they were wearing a hat or if they had fancy hair. It didn't matter who they were. I was able to sit there and do a quick little 5-minute sketch of them, and then a new model would pop up, or I might sketch the person behind them in line. They're going to be there a little longer. Little things you can do like that will absolutely improve your art. It'll improve your eye in seeing things, and it's a great way to just get better faster. Now, some of the artists that inspired me, there are more than I could possibly mention in here, and actually there's probably a lot that I couldn't even remember their names. I've been looking at art since I was a little kid. I've always loved science fiction and fantasy art, comic books, cartoons, and then as I got older, fine art and a lot of oil paintings and things like that. So there's a bunch. There are a few that have heavily influenced me, and not necessarily visually. It's not that you're going to see their influence directly in my art, but more of their philosophy, their approach to art, and the way they impacted art. So the first one I'll speak of, I mentioned him in another video, is Frank Frazetta, world famous sci-fi fantasy artist. His oil paintings, to me, have influenced me heavily in the sense that if you really look at them, they're almost simplistic, but they appear detailed. They bring you into a world, but without a lot of flash and high, heavy detail. It's more about movement, it's about mood and atmosphere, and his compositions, to me, I think are instantly recognizable. I had read at somewhere along the way that the majority of his paintings are based on a triangle shape. And once I saw that, or once I read that, I saw it everywhere in his art. And usually at the the bottom of the painting, coming up to a point somewhere in the center or off center or something, there's usually that triangle shape, and it was common through all of his art. And once you see it, it's almost all you can see. And I love it because that's one of those things that a lot of artists ask, like, how do I develop my own style? How do I stand out from other artists? And sometimes they take it too far. They try to do something that hits you over the head very visually, like, look how different this is from everything else. And sometimes it's not that great. I know, because I've done the same thing. But if you take that idea, finding your style, and think of it in a basic sense, your style can be something as simple as composition, or your choices of color, or your choice of depth in your paintings. All of these things become part of your style, and eventually, if you get it down to where it becomes just part of you, it's the way you see things and the way you paint things for people to see, it is something that over time will become your signature, will become your style, and people will notice it. There's tons of other examples of this. I can't name every one of them, but they're out there. So when you're thinking of your style, think of what is pleasing to you. I'm sure that triangle shape was very pleasing to Frank when he was painting, and it's something that that's where he started. That was his composition, and then everything else came from there. I had also read in an interview of his that a lot of times he didn't really even know what he was going to paint. He would start with just a basic shape of a blob of a cloud or something, and then he let that bring him into that world, and then he would create his painting from there. So there's lots of different ways to get there, and if you have an anchor like that, some sort of a style element that is yours, use that as your anchor, and then create the rest of your design from there. So I could talk about him forever and how he's influenced me, but basically his simplicity, his instantly recognizable style, and especially being among other artists like Louis Royo and all the other great fantasy artists from around that time, and then a little bit beyond. You could put Boris Vallejo, you could put those paintings side by side, at least I could, and I could tell pretty accurately which ones were his. And Louis and Boris, I might get a little confused. I know their art, but I'm not as honed in and tuned into their art as I was in his. But I could definitely pick his out of a crowd for sure. That has happened with me with tattoos that I do. I'm a huge critic of my own work. I'm always trying to get better. I don't think I've ever hit that point where I'm 100% satisfied in everything I've put into it. My clients are, but for myself, there's always something I feel that's, I just need to find that something. And I thought I never found it, but I've had lots of people over the years tell me that people have come up to them, seen their art on their bodies, their tattoos. It's, hey, I really like that. Hey, did Lou at such and such tattoo, do that? And they say, yeah, how did you know that? So apparently I have a particular style or a signature out there that people can recognize. So oftentimes you might not even realize you're doing it, but others notice it. So when they see your art, like, hey, this person did that because, I can tell by the way it's laid out, or I can tell by the choices of colors they made. So trying to find your style and inspiration. Think about these things as you go along. Another one of my favorite artists comes from the world of comic books, and he was really, I've kind of dropped out of comics, so I don't know who's still popular or not, but I know for sure in the 90s he was extremely popular. He had also, I don't know if he was one of the founders, but he was definitely one of the earlier members of Image Comics, artists that had been working for other publishers, and all kind of came together and created Image Comics. Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane, a lot of those guys, Rob Liefeld, they all kind of came together and created it, and it was great. They all had such distinct styles, but this was all under this one banner, and they were able to control their content and their characters, and it was fantastic. But Marc Silvestri was one that really stood out to me, and the comics that I remember that really grabbed me first was The Darkness and Witchblade, and those two comics actually were kind of related to each other. But I loved his composition, and I loved just the way he drew people. So once I knew that I liked his art, I wanted to know more about him, read some articles on him, and came across a great story of before he was discovered. One of the things comic book people that are interested in getting into comics will do is you create a portfolio of your art, and you go to a comic book convention, and publishers will have tables dedicated for reviewing your portfolio, and that's where a lot of jobs can come from. That's where a lot of people can get hired into the industry. I've taken mine to a couple of Comic-Cons and never stood in line. I ended up chickening out, which is exactly what Marc Silvestri did. I believe it was him and his brother. I'm very loosely paraphrasing the story. I read it a long time ago. I'm pretty sure this is how it goes, but he and his brother had gone to the Comic-Con. Marc's intent was to get his work looked at and try to get a job drawing comics. Now, he couldn't build up the courage to actually show it to anyone, but his brother, on the sly, went and met one of the people from the publisher, whether it was, I don't know if it was another artist or someone that just an editor or something, and told them, my brother's art is really great, he's just too shy to show it. Here, is there any way we can get you to look at his art? And the guy from the publisher said, yeah, around this time, bring him around to this room, and I'll take a look at it. And his brother said, great. And he didn't tell Marc what he was doing. And around that time, he said, hey, let's go over here. And they went over, and there was the guy from the publisher, and Marc was surprised. Oh, so the guy said, well, let me see your work. And he starts flipping through his drawings. And he comes across a scene. I want to say it was a city scene or something, bridge, and a good technical piece. And the guy from the publisher asked Marc, this is really good. How long did it take you to draw this particular page, to pencil it? And Marc lied instantly. He said it took him, a day or something like that, or a handful of hours. And the guy offered him a job, and that's how he got into comics. Well, it turns out that page in question had taken him weeks and weeks of working on it endlessly to get it right, and erasing and redrawing and erasing and redrawing. I'm not trying to say lying is good, but I think Marc saw that opportunity, and he saw it as, okay, they want me to draw faster, but if I get this job, it's going to motivate me to draw much faster. And so he took that opportunity, and then he became a fantastic artist. He's done another comic that stood out was a crossover between the X-Men and Star Trek. But to me, I didn't read the story because I wasn't really interested in those stories at the time, but the artwork was absolutely beautiful and distinct. I can usually tell when I see illustration if it was Marc Silvestri that had drawn it up. He also illustrated one of my favorite Batman images, and it was I believe it was for Batman Black and White, a series, and there was a lot of different artists doing Batman just in black and white, and it was Batman sitting in a chair in the Batcave, almost kind of like a throne, and just all these bats. The composition actually was very Frazetta-esque in composition, but it was a great illustration, and just in black and white, and it was absolutely beautiful. So those are two of my favorite artists. And then currently on Instagram, I follow a whole bunch of different artists. Currently, I'd say one of my favorites is Peter Mohrbacher. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. He does, again, kind of that fantasy art stuff. He's done recently done a whole series of angels, but they're not your typical Christian Bible angels. They're these winged entities or flying entities that he has reimagined, and he just does beautiful work with fabric and atmosphere, scenery. Even though our characters are usually what you really want to look at, I find myself really getting into his scenery and the depth that he creates. And I'm pretty sure he does a mix of traditional media and digital media. A lot of times he'll show a progression of his paintings, and it seems that there's some digital work in there, but then some of it appears that it has to be traditional media. And it might be both. I do that as well sometimes, where I'll create something. It's easier for me to conceptualize something digitally and then take that as my reference to put something on canvas, because digitally, I can get my ideas down quick and then manipulate each layer. If I want my background softer or sharper, or any element, it's very easy to work that out digitally, get your reference close to what you want, and then start painting it on there. So Peter Mohrbacher, he's one of my favorites right now. He also has I'm not sure if it's a podcast or a YouTube channel. It is on here, so I would just type in Peter Mohrbacher. I'll try to look it up for you and link it in the description for you guys to find. So he's one that really inspires me. When I feel like I need some inspiration, I'll go on Instagram, see if he's posted anything new. Another one is Greg Simkins, goes by Craola. Many of you may already be familiar with him. Absolutely beautiful, surreal paintings, a lot of times using iconic characters like Kermit the Frog and Mickey Mouse, but just mixed in with all these other crazy other creatures in this amazing scene that is so highly detailed. It's just, it takes you a long time just to really try to absorb it all. And he definitely has a YouTube channel. I've watched a lot of his videos. A lot of it are time-lapse videos. And these are really big canvases that he works on. And even though it's time-lapse, I get the impression that he gets through these pretty darn quickly. He's a great illustrator. You'll see in his time lapses of him actually sketching in the next character with a pencil, and just by looking at the marks that he's making, he's already got that figured out. I don't know if there are references that are off camera that we can't see that maybe he's drawing from. Regardless, in a lot of what appears to be very simple strokes, he gets great high detail and kind of just lush color and shape to a lot of his characters. So he's definitely one that I will look at for inspiration. Sometimes it can be a little soul crushing when I look at my art and then I go and directly look at his. I haven't even come close. But it's a bar that's there that I can aim for and try to push my stuff in there. And I do think of him when I paint. As I'm painting, especially if I'm having a hard time, or I don't think something's coming out right, I think, man, like, I know I can, because I've illustrated things that are highly detailed. I think I switch subjects and styles so often because of my work that it doesn't come to me quite as quickly as it appears to come to him. So anyway, I do think of that. I think of lots of different artists when I paint, and I try to aim for that bar, that level that they're at. So constantly trying to push yourself forward. And sometimes that can be tough when you get accolades and you have friends and people on Facebook or Instagram that are applauding and putting up trophies and wow, it's stunning. I hate that, by the way. That I have never been stunned by looking at a piece of art. I've been impressed, but I've never been stunned. So anyway, um, you know, exposing yourself to different types of art is going to give you inspiration, and yes, it may be a little disheartening when you compare your work to it, but it's apples and oranges. You know, some of these artists have been doing this their entire lives. Some of them are highly trained, have gone to years and years of art school. They're probably still paying for it, but you know, it gives you somewhere to go with your stuff. So don't be complacent, and if you truly are, if you won, you know, awards for, you know, your painting of bowls of fruit from every major gallery in the world, maybe try painting something else. You know, I don't know, complacency to me, or being so specialized in one thing, to me doesn't seem like fun. I always want to try something different, and even when I'm painting within a certain style or medium, you know, in between or off to the side, I'll do something completely 180 degrees from there, sometimes 213 and a half degrees, because, you know, 180 and 360 are too cut and dry for me. So anyway, that's my advice for, you know, looking for inspiration, finding that time to draw, and you know, always constantly pushing yourself forward. So yeah, today was just sitting around talking around the easel. I love talking art, and anytime I'm around any of my friends who are artists and we get on the topic, you know, it starts off as a simple conversation and it ends up sometimes being 2 or 3 hours just getting into different artists and what inspires us, things that we want to, you know, experiment with. So if any of that is interesting and you want to talk more, feel free to get into the comment section and ask some questions, bring up some topics, anything. I love talking art, so I'll jump in there and you know, we could talk away. And you know, if there's anything specific that you would like me to do a video on, definitely let me know. I've got a list of ideas that I'm going through, so maybe it's already on there, or maybe seeing that's something you really want to see, it'll move up the list and get done a lot quicker. So to wrap it up, I would like to thank a new Patreon. I've got Nate in there with Amanda, so now I've got 2, and but it feels good. It feels great that you know, there's some of you out there that you know, want to help promote this channel and you know, help me to make better videos in the future. And becoming a patron is definitely a great way to do that. You know, if that becomes a good revenue stream for me, that's not money for me to go out and have fun with. That's money for me to get better video equipment, maybe hire someone to help with editing, research, and things like that. Anything that comes from there, that's going to be all put back into these videos. So you know, rather than coming out of my pocket and my regular bill money. So if you want to help, please go on patreon.com, look up Serenity Art Space, and become a patron. And hopefully soon I will be able to offer up some cool prizes on there for those of you that subscribe. And you, Amanda and Nate, you guys are definitely going to get a special prize. Just haven't worked out what it's going to be yet, but definitely want to thank you guys for breaking the ice and getting the ball rolling on that. So as always, have fun, make art, make a mess, and I'll see you in the studio next time. Take care.